And now for the Q&A.
Here's a question from Tim.
Hi, Tim.
Tim says, thank you for doing this site and podcast. While there is so much I wish to say, I have one question I would like to ask you and learn more. Can you talk about the liquid diet you did? What were you having? Just protein shakes? He says, I'm eager to make an initial dent in weight loss to help gain focus on the lifestyle change by gaining some quick progress to energize myself with.
Okay. I actually did 2 liquid diets in my lifetime. When I was 10, I was put on a diet called OptiFast. And so that's 37 years ago. I'm going to try to accurately recall the circumstances there. It was doctor supervised. There was a location, like you went somewhere, you saw a doctor, you got, I don't know that I had an EKG or anything like that, but some form of physical examination. And then the thing that I loved, my mom was like a super granola hippie person. We shopped at, back then, health food stores like couldn't pay their light bills, so they were always dim. There was dust on shit because nobody was really shopping there. Everybody in there was either a Sikh or looked like they have cancer. Like that was my memory of health food stores as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And now you go into Erewhon and it's like chicks in fucking yoga pants doing Snapchats and like selfies in front of like $30 glass bottled waters and, you know, fabulous people and beetroot drinks with wheatgrass and fucking gross. So it was gross for me as a kid and it's gross today. But my point is like, like my mom thought like if we don't give him Frosted Flakes, but we give him like the fucking natural alternative to that that's less processed, right? Because everything's basically processed. He's not going to be so fat. Not the case. I'll overeat the fucking shitty cardboard cereal. I'll do it. I'll overeat olive oil and sprouted bread and all the shit. You know, you want to give me raw cheese, I'll overeat that. What was my point? What was okay. So here was the big selling point. I know I can come back to it. Like I just get so riled up about health food. And so even today, my wife's like, is it organic? And I get my blood begins to boil like these fucking hippies. They sold us a bunch of bullshit. And that's not to say like, I do think the excessively processed food is pretty much garbage, but like a tomato is a fucking tomato, Tim. You know what I mean? Like, come on. And those GMO fucking pesticided out, roided up tomatoes, they're fucking beautiful and delicious. You know what I mean? And then you see the haggard, limp ones sitting in the organic bin. And it's like, why would I choose that? Anyway, one of the benefits of the first liquid diet I did, OptiFast, was the doctor told my mom he can drink as much diet soda as he wants. Now, this is prior to stevia and Hanson's having, you know, the Hanson's back in the day was like the crazy soda we got to drink because it was natural. Fucking bullshit. And and then the doctor says he can drink as much diet soda. And I'm like, holy shit, we get to go to a regular store. We get to get fucking diet like soda and I get to drink as much of it. And I was like, I'm fucking in, dude. I get to eat real food from a real store. And we went and I remember getting like liters of Diet Orange Crush. And you know, I'm trying to remember. For some reason, I remember Diet Orange Soda, which I think my mom, I wanted to say my wife, but my mom was okay with that because it didn't have caffeine, even though she'd put me on Fen-Phen not long after that, which like I didn't sleep for a week. Yeah. So there was diet soda and I was so stoked. And then on that, you just got 3 shakes a day. And I have no idea what was in these shakes, but I believe they were like an attempt at balanced nutrition, right? So there's probably some vitamins and minerals, some fats and carbohydrates in these shakes and protein. But I honestly don't know. I don't know that OptiFast still exists. I vaguely feel like I've seen something called Slim Fast, and maybe that's a variation of it. But this was like a more comprehensive program. And week 1, you go in after a week and you weigh in, and like you then do like group therapy, and everybody sits around and talks about like the struggles of like dieting and how they're feeling and how they're doing. And I remember my mom like being really disgruntled about the diet soda, like really not into the diet soda. And then seeing me, a 10-year-old kid, and I was by far the young, like there were no other children on this program at the time. They were all obese adults, and there really weren't obese children back then. I mean, I was an obese child, so there were, but like nothing like today. And my mom was very uncomfortable with me, a little kid, participating in group therapy with a bunch of adults. She was just like, this is awkward. But I lost weight and I was loving it, and I was loving the diet soda. And that was it. That one group therapy and the diet soda, it was a bridge too far. It was beyond the pale. My mom pulled me off it. And then, there were a bunch of other fucking dumb wackadoo diets. Anyway, to come full circle, as an adult, 2002 rolls around. I've been sober for about a year. I wake up. There's a number of circumstances that lead to me going like, oh, I have another real major physical problem to deal with, my weight. I talk to my wife. She says, yeah, no big deal. We can do this. I'm away in Romania shooting a movie. I get back, and she has set up a liquid diet for me with another fucking hippie crackpot named Avatar. That was his spiritual name, because the hippies have spiritual names, and that's what he went by. And this was a protein drink and a green drink, which they were both, neither tasted good because they were quote unquote healthy. So there wasn't like artificial sweeteners or anything to make you feel like a human being when you drank them. So I would just mix them, because who wants to like space out the pain of consuming this slop? And then there were like a lot of vitamins, minerals, some oil pills, and fiber. And I will tell you, like, let's get real graphic for a minute. On this, like, I remember deep into it, like my system had like shut down so much. It was so not used. It was just like, you're not feeding us anything. We're not going to really digest it. So I was shitting out mostly liquid and then some pills that had just not been digested at all. Some of these vitamins and fiber pills and stuff. Like I remember like, another Avatar would call these evacuations. Another evacuation that's just clear liquid. And there's a couple of the pills I swallowed in perfect form. Like nothing has happened to them. They haven't passed through a digestive tract at all. But in 2 months, so like 60 days, I lost 80 pounds doing that program. And I will say, interestingly enough, I never gained any of that weight back.
Wow.
So I continued to diet and lost some more weight when I introduced food into my diet. And it was very strict. I think the diet I went to when I introduced food was the blood type diet. So I was like, but I was also like really trying to eat small amounts. Like I wasn't eating to satiety at all by any means. And I continued losing weight. And then eventually I started gaining some of that weight back. And it was like, oh, I need a new crazy diet. And so I found a new crazy diet, I think I did First Personal, which if you've heard of is a psychotic diet that I lost another 30 pounds and then gained that 30 pounds back. But the 80 pounds I lost from the liquid diet, that is banked weight loss that never got touched.
And so let me just ask you a question here. I think you said in the very beginning of this, consulting a doctor, right? Because we all know there's 1,000, crazy diets. There's 1,000 quick weight loss diets and all of that. But like, looking back on it, do you feel like that was because he's writing going, hey, I need to jumpstart, right? And I know that feeling all too well. Do you think that that was beneficial in that way? Like, you know what I mean? Just to.
Yeah, man, I'm like, if I'm being completely frank, I remember OptiFast was the first diet I was on where I was invested. So I was 10 years old. I weighed over 200 pounds. I wasn't really thrilled with diets because I'd been put on a number of diets and there was no change, no perceptible change. And in a week on OptiFast, I lost weight that like I could notice. My clothes were looser. I weighed a lot less on the scale. And I was like, oh my God, this is working. And I get diet soda, which is like, I was so happy. And I could have done that diet. Now, I think the problem with any of these things is we're looking for a solution, right? I think it's human nature that we're looking for a solution. I don't think any liquid diet is a solution. I think it's a perfectly fine point for an obese or a morbidly obese person to begin. But I think going into it with the idea that this is not going to get me, this is not going to be a long-term thing. And I don't think weight loss is a linear thing. I don't think there's been any evidence of successful long-term weight loss when you just put your calories so low that you got from point A of beginning to a healthy weight and then maintained it. I've never heard of a single person doing that. I'm sure it's possible, but God, it's going to be hard when you start eating. If you've not like really looked at any of your habits with food, all you've done is this one thing. I've never heard of it happening. So like, yeah, if you want that to be the beginning, I get that. Sure. That's amazing. That could totally work. Knowing like, oh, there's a lot more work to come. To get me to a life where like I'm now existing for the rest of my life in this state where I'm not going to balloon up again, but it's a perfectly reasonable place to start as long as you're not going, this is my solution. If you're going like, this is the first step in a marathon.
Right.
And it's only the first step. It's not the second or third step. It's only the first of 1,000,000 steps or 100,000 steps or something like that. And you're actively working on what's the next step. The next step is something different. And you want to do something like that for 30 or 60 days. And like, this is incredibly important. People have different healths. Like this could be too stressful on somebody's system. And a doctor could say, don't do that. That's, you have heart issues or you have kidney issues or whatever. That's a really bad idea for you. I don't know if it's I think if you're morbidly obese, it's probably not a bad idea, but I'd still like check in with a doctor. But if you're like, fine day to day, other than you've got a couple 100 pounds of excess weight and your joints hurt and you're not sleeping great, it's probably fine to do this for a short period of time. But I'm not a doctor. I couldn't tell you all the list of reasons why it could potentially be harmful. I don't know.
Yeah. Great.
But I think for the most part, the health benefits of weight loss would outweigh any of, I think it's probably fine.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That does. Good. Well, I wish him so much luck. And I'm going to just remember again what you said, that it's the first step in maybe 100,000 steps.
Right. That's what we're all doing. Today is the first step in 100,000 steps for me. And I've taken that first step 100,000 times. And tomorrow will be the first step. It's all the first step, it's always the first step. I think figuring imagining things to be solutions, that's a real problem, because I think the solution is going to be a whole ecosystem of change that you can't even figure out on day one, that it's going to take like a lot of trial and error and practice to get to like, oh, hey, after 20 years, I can say, like, if I continue to live my life in the way I'm living and try to improve myself every day and make every day the first step, that's a workable solution long term.
Yeah.
Took 20
Yeah.
years, but I finally figured out some semblance. And part of it is like, I'm never finished. There's no finish line. It's always work.
Yeah. It is. It is, but it's also rewarding, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that, Ethan. Thanks to everybody who asks questions that I get to hear the answers to, because it helps me too. So thank you. And if anybody else has a question, you can email it to us day or night. hello@americanglutton.net.
Hello to you.